Welcome to the Homeschool Idaho's Getting Started series, a 10-part series where we help you get started in your homeschool journey. This is session 9, so if you haven't heard the first 8 sessions, go back and listen. Today, we'll be talking about homeschooling during those high school years. This tends to stress a lot of parents out and bring out a lot of questions because it is slightly different than homeschooling in those early years. And we want to help equip you and get you prepared because you can do this. So I'm here with my friend, Audra Talley, who's going to help us look at the nuts and the bolts and how to get started in homeschooling Idaho, take away some of that fear and those apprehensions, but also set out a really good plan so that you know that you and your students can be successful. So welcome, Audra. Good morning. We're going to just dive right in. So can you just kind of guide us through a little bit about how can we navigate those high school years? They tend to be a little intimidating for a lot of parents. So just kind of walk us through that.
Okay. Well, the key to homeschooling high schooling is plan ahead.
Okay.
Consider your middle school years, your 7th and 8th grade years as transitional years where you kind of take those practice steps towards your high school, whether it's course load, whether it's how you wanted them to manage their time, the types of courses they're going to be taking in high school. So that's a good time to really start thinking forward.
Okay.
But again, the key component is planning. Okay. So let's start right off with what kind of goals you should lay out, and don't be afraid to write this out and stick to them.
Okay.
What courses would you like your students to take? What would ideally look like a homeschool high school course load? Some of it, maybe you want your kids to take some advanced math classes. Maybe you want them to take advanced science courses. This is the time to really delve into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
Another key is to plan as if your child is going to college.
Okay.
Not every kid's going to want to do it, but it's better to err on the side of going to college and have them choose not to than to not have prepared for it and them deciding to do it.
So that will kind of guide us with as far as what requirements we need, because when you say plan what you want to do, is it just what I want them to learn? But what I'm hearing is if we're kind of planning for college, then that helps us know what are the requirements, not for high school in Idaho, but what are the requirements for college?
Right. And
okay.
the plan for college is kind of gives you the framework to work with.
Okay.
And then what you would like to plug in there can largely be determined by what you want your kids to learn.
Gotcha. Okay.
So one of the things you need to pay attention to is that if your child is going to college, you will start usually making those applications to college in the senior year. So the transcripts that you'll create, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, is largely going to be on their first 3 years of high school. So you want a strong showing you want to be strong out of the gate as far as your course criteria and in the classes you choose to have your kids.
Okay.
So that's the other thing to bear in mind is for your high school diploma, for your student, again, there's nobody saying that they have to meet certain criteria, but you have to remember they're going to be competing with public school peers for those college scholarships, space in the college in the first place. So again, it's prudent to look at what their peers are doing.
Okay.
To develop a pattern or, again, a framework to work within. So that's your primary thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
So the first thing we need to tackle is counting credits. All high schoolers in a public school setting are going to get a certain number of credits. There's a certain number of credits in 4 years they have to get. And each year should have a certain number of credits. Well,
right. And this is new to a lot of parents who haven't done this up until this point, because we haven't counted credits in those elementary years. So this is new. So tune in. And even though, like Audra said, there are not necessarily requirements as homeschool parents in Idaho, we make the requirements for our children for their degree. But like you said, they are competing with other kids. So we need to look at that as we look at credits. So we are counting credits now starting in the 9th grade year, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us how to do that.
Again, it's easier to do it at the front end and count credits at the beginning versus getting to 11th grade and going, I got to go back and remember what we did in 9th grade.
Gotcha. So plan ahead.
Gotcha. So there's a couple methods that are typically used for counting credits. There's what's called the Carnegie unit, which is 1 credit equals a year-long course of study. So 1
Okay.
year of history or 2 semesters of history, 1 year, will count as a Carnegie unit.
Okay.
Then there's a semester credit, which is 1 credit for 1 semester course. So a 2-semester year will give your student 2 credits.
Okay.
And this is typically Idaho high schools follow what's called a semester credit.
Okay.
So I kind of like that layout a little bit better for high school because you can give 2 history credits, but study 2 different courses of history. It just mentally makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too.
But the key here is pick one and stick with it because most colleges are familiar with both formats.
Okay.
But just pick one and stick with it.
Gotcha.
So now we know, okay, we want to, let's say, do a semester credit. So the next step is evaluating what actually constitutes a credit. Well, generally 120 to 180 hour course, which would be what you would study if you covered a subject at about an hour a day, 5 days a week for the average school year, would give you approximately that 120 to 180.
Okay.
And that would count as a credit.
Okay.
If you're at 100 hours, it's probably not too big of a deal. Honestly, the easiest way to look at it may be, okay, this textbook or this particular topic can be covered in 1 semester. So we're going to count that as 1 credit.
Okay. And that makes sense with homeschool because as we've talked before in other sessions, we aren't bound to those hours. If my kid can do what would take another kid 8 hours in 1 hour, then he doesn't need to be shortchanged that credit. So basically, if you finish that course, I don't care if you finish it in, however many hours, that course would be a credit. So you can do it that way too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, they've done the work just because they were super efficient. You're not going to, give them and, not count it because they were super efficient and got it done in 75 hours.
Gotcha.
The other thing you have to think about now in high school is actually issuing grades.
Okay.
All the way up to middle school, through middle school. I mean, there are subjects like math that you're probably grading.
Right.
But things like language and history and science, you're kind of, okay, we messed up here. We're going to go back and we're going to figure out why we messed up. But we don't really issue grades in a traditional sense. So starting in high school, you need to keep grades and track of your grades. And again, that middle school is a great time to transition.
Okay.
Because you're going to need to issue a final grade for the year.
Right.
One of the things as you grade, you're going to want to be consistent. Okay, what makes an A? A 90 to 100%?
Okay.
94 to 100%? A B could be 80 to 90%, or let's say 90 to 94% as a B. So pick your matrix or how you calculate their grades and what makes an A or a B, and be consistent across the boards, across the years.
Okay.
And then when you go to build your transcript, make sure that you include on that transcript, and I'll show you a sample of that in a minute.
Your grading
make
scale.
Sure you, your grading scale. Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it also gets your child, grading in high school, gets your child ready for college because they're going to get grades in college. So you're also kind of have an eye forward. So there's multiple reasons for doing a grade.
Gotcha.
The other thing is for your high schoolers, set clear expectations about what will their grades be based on. Are you going to grade them based solely on their tests?
Okay.
Are you going to do it graded based on daily assignments and tests, quizzes? You got to kind of think about that kind of ahead of time. And like math may be super easy. Let's say math, you're going to grade them on their tests.
Right.
They're in between practice times, not such a big deal.
Right.
When you go to grade subjects like language, or even history, a little bit your soft sciences, you're going to want to maybe create what's called a grading rubric, which is a fancy word for laying out your grading expectations. So let's say a language paper, for example, can be graded. You're going to grade 65% on content.
Okay.
So they actually gave you the information you wanted to see on that paper.
Okay.
You can grade 20% on the mechanics. Is their grammar and spelling correct? Their punctuation, their format, all correct? 10% on the effort. Are they putting genuine effort into this paper? You're going to give them just a freebie for a lot of effort. And then maybe 5% on timeliness, that they actually turn their paperwork in on time.
Okay. And as the parent get to determine,
those ratios.
We get yes, exactly. That rubric we design. Okay.
Right.
So what
And
matters to us?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And so we may put more value on content and less on effort.
Okay.
And just to be aware, ladies, parents, teachers, this is very common in college, to have this kind of grading rubric already laid out.
Right.
So don't feel like you're kind of, well, what's the point of this? You're actually
Right.
setting them up to understand expectations on college.
Gotcha.
So let me show you real quick an example of a transcript record, and it's going to be kind of hard to see because I can't get you in close enough. But we have your different topics over here, and then you have your 9th grade, 10th, 11th, 12th, and you can assign a specific grade for every topic. And again, your grading scale would be down here.
Okay.
And like in this particular example, our grading scale is over here. And this is just a blank example that came out of a random book that somebody gave me.
So we could find this online. We could, okay.
You could find it online. You can find it at HSLDA. If you want to know what your state high school requirements are for every year, HSLDA also has those on their website. So you can find Idaho's high school general education.
Wonderful. Perfect. That's what parents are going to want. They want to see it in front of them. So HSLDA
absolutely
will have that for you. Perfect.
Yeah. Yes. And again, don't be afraid of keeping your transcripts super simple, very straightforward. Don't overcomplicate.
So nobody's going to come and ask us for work samples or all the work that they did in the end. We just need this transcript.
You need the transcript, although some high schools may want samples of their writing, because the writing, again, is a
colleges,
more complex.
Right?
Colleges.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
For your graduating students, no, the state's not going to come and go, oh, you didn't meet minimum, general requirements.
Right.
The state doesn't care as long as you've given them, what's generally expected for a high school student to know.
Gotcha.
So it'll be more you're targeting your transcript for college.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
So
which is a benefit of homeschool freedom, is if you know your child is going into a specific trade or a specific college or a specific, then you can really you can accommodate their education towards that, and that's one of the beautiful things about homeschool freedom is that you can do that, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have the transcript. So now what?
Next, let's kind of look at what's going to be on that transcript, the subjects that you're going to want to cover. And there's typically, for Idaho high school students, for generally across the board, high school students are going to cover 5 core academic areas. They're going to study English, math, history, science, and foreign language. So those will be the 5 that you're going to want to have some content, some material on your transcript.
Okay.
You can include electives at some point if you want, but let's kind of just look at each one of those roughly and see and I'm going to give you a lot of information based on what Idaho public school students are doing. And again, remember, this is not a formula. It's a framework. It's to give you some idea of what you're shooting for a high school transcript that will be complete for a college application.
Gotcha.
So for English, Idaho public schools typically require 4 years of English and 1 semester of speech. So if you're following the semester credit, that means that, if they 4 years of English, they're going to have 8 English credits plus a semester of speech. So that'd be 9 English credits.
Okay.
If we're following that 1 credit per semester format.
Gotcha.
So, and English can be literature, writing, communication, vocabulary, grammar. I mean, you can study British or world literature, American literature, creative writing, journalism.
Wow.
There's all kinds of different English that can fall under that heading. So don't think this is just, we got to go and we got to write a whole bunch of technical papers in order to qualify for English.
Gotcha.
Math is pretty much the same way. 4 years of math for Idaho public school students. They'll typically cover algebra 1 and 2 and geometry, and then 1 additional level that could be calculus, it could be trigonometry, It could be, especially if your child is college bound, that trigonometry or calculus is going to look really nice on their transcript.
Okay.
If your kid is they want to go non-college bound, they're going to go to a technical school. They can do general or consumer math.
Okay.
Those are also really good practical math to look at for that fourth year.
Okay.
History. Idaho public school students do 2.5 years of history. So they usually cover 1 year of U.S. history, 1 year of government, and 1 semester of economics.
Okay.
So again, what focus, is it general U.S. history, or is it U.S. history on a particular time period?
So there's still so much freedom in this.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful.
In that. Yeah.
So Audra, really quick before you go on, where can we find this information for parents that are not writing all this down right now? This is on, go ahead.
This will be on your HSLDA website that will show you, what each state requires. You're going to show Idaho requires 4 history, for math credits.
So this is that information that's on HSLDA. Perfect. Wonderful.
It's not going to specify which history or which math, but it will specify the general education requirement.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Science, Idaho public schools require 3 years, and 2 of those must include a lab. Okay. Well, don't get worried about the lab part. Okay. Just think of the lab part as this is the hands-on application of what they're learning. So this is where you get out your kitchen counter, and work on your kitchen counter and do those dissections or those experiments.
Okay. Perfect.
And don't be afraid of it. It doesn't have to be real fancy. It doesn't have to be this big process.
Okay. So this can be done at
a lot of, yes.
Okay.
And a lot of science curriculum actually incorporates labs as you go. Apologia is one good example of that. Their science curriculum has ongoing experiments throughout the lessons. That if you do those experiments, there's your lab credit.
Perfect. Easy.
Simple, simple, simple.
Yes.
So, physical science, earth science, biology, chemistry, physics, there's a whole plethora of options. And again, you want 3 years of science, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do a specific science on a specific year. You pick what is going to work for your family.
Okay.
And just remember, if you're doing high school level, chemistry or physics, your kid's probably going to need a pretty good grasp of algebra, at least to the algebra 1 level. Some sciences just, you need that math foundation.
For sure. Okay.
So just bear that in mind. Okay. Foreign languages.
This one stresses everybody out, right? Between the science lab, which you just put us at rest, and foreign language. How do we do that?
Okay, so Idaho Public School does not require foreign language. What they require is what's called Interdisciplinary Humanities.
Okay.
Technical term. Okay, it can be a language, it can be a foreign language, but it can also be visual performing arts. So this is your art and language kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
Some colleges are really going to want to see foreign language depending on what college your student wants to go to. If your student doesn't want to go to college, make this a fun credit.
Okay.
But if your child wants to go to college, they're probably going to need 2 years of a foreign language, but that may also depend on the degree they plan on pursuing.
Okay.
But again, it's best to assume that your child is going to go to college, best to assume that they're going to need this than to find out they didn't do it and then find out they do need it.
So it's better to set them up for that they can succeed at anything, and then they can decide later rather than look behind and go, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And some colleges do consider American Sign Language as a foreign language.
Okay.
So check with the college that your student wants to go to, and just remember you're looking for a 2-year competency level.
Okay.
And you're also giving your kid a boost up. For my degree, which was political science and history, which, what does foreign language have to do with political science and American political science and history? But I had to have a 2-year competency level at the college level as well. So you're also really setting a firm foundation for your kids when they're in college to be able to do well.
Okay. Wonderful.
Physical education. Super simple. Idaho public school students have to have 1 credit in PE or health. And
in the whole 4 years.
in the whole 4 years.
Okay.
If your kid does PE every year for 4 years, give them 4 credits. And that's the same with math. That's the same with every subject. Okay, these are the minimum requirements. But if your kid is obsessed with math and they go trigonometry and calculus, and then they start getting to college level math, give them credit for it.
For sure.
So their transcript may show 12 credits, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for colleges.
Gotcha.
Again, we already talked about the fine arts falls within their interdisciplinary humanities. But again, if you want to break that out separate from your foreign language, and your child is also doing art history, let's say, include that in your transcripts and in your
will you go back to PE, to physical education? So how would we do that as homeschoolers? Just set a goal, have the child meet the goal, and there's their credit, or how does that look for PE for homeschool?
Okay, so PE or health. So health a lot of time is actually a book, a course that they can take.
Correct.
PE can be, okay, you take an enroll them, dual enroll them for basketball at the local public school, or maybe your church has a basketball league that the kids are part of and they have to participate on a regular basis.
Okay.
You could set them up. There's running clubs all over the valley, or you could set up your own, son. You know, if you want to get a PE credit, we're going to do cross country, and this is what
you have to run X amount of miles in X amount of time. So you make the standards, you make the goals, and then when they succeed, they get that credit. So there's so much freedom. Even though we have this outline of what is required, it's endless, the amount of freedom and the directions we can go with this.
Yeah, wonderful. Don't get hung up on this as a must do. This is a framework. This is some way for you to put all these different things your student is learning into a tangible format that then a college will understand what they're looking at.
Okay.
So electives. This is where you get to have a lot of fun. And electives show a variety of electives. I mean, from one year or semester to the next. Colleges love students who are engaged in the world around them, that are volunteering, that are interested in multiple different areas of study. And you can really highlight their interests in your electives and make sure, again, those go on their transcripts and assign a grade to them. Give them credit for everything they're doing. And even if it's stuff that they're doing that's not formal textbook stuff. I mean, if your child is working they go out in your shop and play around on a lawnmower and make your lawnmower run all the time. That's a shop class.
Totally.
That's an elective.
This is where homeschool families thrive, because this is what we've been doing all along in general.
Exactly.
So this is really where we thrive in this area.
Yeah. So just have fun with those. The Bible. A lot of homeschool parents have Bible as part of their core curriculum. Secular colleges and schools are just going to look at that as an elective, which is fine, because again, that adds breadth to your child's experience and what they're learning. Christian colleges may consider that an academic core. So depending on where your student may want to go, you might want to make a phone call and find out how many credits they need to have in that in Bible. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
Let's move on to what's called an elite college bound. Again, if you're doing what we've just covered, and you're providing a broad range of subjects that fit within what Idaho students are already doing, your kids are going to be set for college either way.
Okay.
For your high school kids, if they're wanting to go to an elite college, just be aware that there may have to be advanced placement courses that they're going to want to take.
Okay.
So you're going to have to check out HSLDA again for information about advanced placement courses.
Okay.
And that will be college specific.
Right.
So don't get too hung up on that. But again, as you're planning your high school, that 4 years is going to go fast. Make sure you kind of have a pulse on what your potential colleges are going to want.
Right. And always, I would say, overshoot. If you think there is even a small chance your child wants to go to one of those elite colleges, plan for it. Plan for it ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Always kind of overshoot so that then anything will fall under that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what about this is a big question we get. What about the ACTs, the SATs, all of these tests that that the public schools are doing. How does that apply to us as homeschoolers?
So a lot of colleges are going to want to see an ACT or an SAT.
Okay.
So start early. Start, looking at maybe their sophomore, junior years of having them take the SAT test, because again, the more they take the test.
We don't need it for graduation requirements, but
No,
it will. Okay, so it's not necessary for graduation requirements, but for college-bound students, it potentially is. Gotcha.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So again, verify what the college is going to want to see.
Right.
And take the test that fits that. But don't be afraid to have your students study up for it, do a prep test, to take the test a couple of times.
Okay.
This is also a great, if you've been having your child take the Iowa skills test on an ongoing basis, purely for informational purposes, or just because you want them to learn test taking, when they get to the ACT, SAT, they're going to be so familiar with the format, so comfortable with the testing environment, that this is not going to throw them. So that's another reason.
Homeschool Idaho provides that. That's an optional test that we work with yes. So that is an option. If you're wondering what that is, get on the homeschoolidaho.org site, and it will tell you the tests that we that are offered out there for homeschoolers. It is not required, but it is offered to prepare them. Like you said, it'll prepare them for these tests, so it's not so foreign to them.
Exactly.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay. So that's that basic. Now I'm going to jump over to the GED, because we're talking about testing right now. So let's discuss GEDs.
Yeah. So the GED, explain what that is. So that is not a high school diploma. That is something that students take as the general education degree. It is not seen as a high school diploma. And what do you think of the GED and homeschoolers and taking a GED rather than actually doing a diploma?
Well, the trouble with the GED that you're going to bump into is there's a stigma attached to the GED. And it's usually something that's obtained by children, teenagers who drop out of high school, who couldn't hack it, who dropped out because of, circumstances in their lives. And so it really has a negative stigma attached to it.
And it's not necessary. Homeschoolers can get a high school degree, a diploma, very simply. I mean, with just the amount of work that you have discussed. So it's not a necessary thing. And many parents just default to that because they kind of panic. I don't know what to do. We'll take the GED. And we really recommend, it's not necessary. Don't do that. Give your kids what they have earned, what they have worked hard for, what you as a parent have worked hard for. Give them that.
And remember, give them that diploma from your school, because that, again, legally by the state of Idaho, the diploma you issue your child is just as valid as the diploma issued by the high school down the street.
Absolutely.
So bear that in mind and treat it that way, and act as if it's that way when you're applying to colleges, because most colleges are not going to question a diploma from a high school, whether it's a homeschool high school or not.
Correct.
So if a college tells you, well, you have to take a GED, one pushback on that, usually there's an alternative now, because colleges love homeschool students for a plethora of reasons. So if you get that from that first person you talk to on the phone about going to college, push back on that. Ask them, no, wait, I have a legally issued diploma that is recognized in the state of Idaho where I live. This should be enough. If they push back on you, well, then what is an alternative to the GED? Sometimes they'll accept a specific paper on a specific topic instead. So don't just swallow that I have to have a GED right up front.
And this is another reason to be an HSLDA member and be a Homeschool Idaho member, because if you face that, then you call HSLDA, you contact Homeschool Idaho, and we talk through that. We explain, no, that's not exactly accurate, because there's a lot of inaccurate information that colleges or trade schools that they're not fully aware of, that we actually just need to educate them that no, this diploma actually it is a legit diploma. So so just wonderful. That's just something to bear in mind. Great, thank you. Okay, so let's jump back to our extracurricular activities. So again, this is where you count everything your child's involved in, and that's going to go on your transcript as extracurricular. They are looking for students with a broad range of experiences. So again, keep track of what they do: volunteer work, their athletics, 4-H, church work, music,
everything else that makes up their life that shows a student who's interested in learning,
Okay.
put that on that transcript. So
Wonderful.
consider, as part of an extracurricular activity, doing an internship. Don't be afraid to ask, the neighbor down the street who has a dairy to let your child who's interested in veterinary science go do an internship with them.
Wonderful.
You would be surprised at how many. I did this when I was in college, but this would work in high school too. I actually had a district judge who I asked him if I could shadow him for a summer in court. And that he was like, sure. It wasn't,
Wow.
all I had to do was ask. And he was all about it. So don't be afraid to ask different people in different disciplines to let your child intern with them.
Wonderful.
When they're in high school.
Okay.
Consider career counseling. HSLDA has a lot of resources on that too. If your child or you are not sure where to go or which end is up, consider somebody who can kind of talk to your child and help them sort through all the. If you're like most high schoolers, you say, I don't know, but really it's because you have a list that's a mile long of things you would like to do, and narrowing it down is the struggle. So
right, for sure.
Consider that as an option. Again, we already covered transcripts, so don't be afraid of those. That's just a documentation of what your child has done.
Gotcha.
And then don't be afraid to do dual enrollment with your kid. So if there's a subject that you just are not comfortable with, that you can do the job, consider dual enrollment.
Yeah. And that is not just with public schools. There are so many opportunities out there online. There are so many organizations that have classes that your kids can take. I mean, homeschooling is booming, and there are so many opportunities for homeschoolers to take classes online that are not necessarily through the public school system, that you can count for credit.
Right. Yeah.
So you do not have to do this on your own. Yeah.
On your own. There's all kinds of resources. And again, this is a great opportunity to chat up a parent who's graduated 3 kids and 2 of them are in college already, or talk to a homeschool parent who was homeschooled growing up, who successfully completed a college career.
Right.
And you will be surprised at how simple it is if you just keep the plan in place. If you plan ahead, so much of this is just going to drop right into place, and it's going to be a non-issue.
Wonderful. So I think one of the big things with homeschool in those high school years is parents think, I do not remember any geometry, or I do not remember trigonometry, or I do not remember, I'm not smart enough to teach high school. And that's what we want to kind of debunk for you is, it's not how smart you are. You are facilitating your child's education at this level. You are giving them the information they need to learn it. So we just want to encourage you, do not fear the homeschool years. And Audra's really she's really shown us it's not scary. It's just a matter of organizing, planning ahead, and keeping a record. So there's endless.
And look at high school. I was just going to say, and look at high school as an opportunity to learn the things that you didn't learn in high school. Yes. I know for me, I'm looking forward to, I struggled in math when I was in high school and I didn't enjoy it, but you know what? I am looking forward to learning the high school math that I'm going to have to be teaching my son. And so we're going to be doing it together. And I think it's a fantastic way to learn.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. So again, this is an exciting time. And like Audra said at the beginning, this is where you see the fruits of your labor. So, hang in there. And this is where you really get to see it all come together, and you get to, prepare those last 4 years before you launch your child, and you see all the work that was put into it. And then you get to see the success. So hang on. There are so many resources. Head over to HSLDA, head over to homeschoolidaho.org. Reach out to us. We're here to answer questions. There are so many that have gone before us that have so much wisdom. So don't be afraid to reach out. So we are excited that you guys have hung in there. We're excited for your high school years. And we will be back with one more session of this series, Getting Started in Homeschooling. So we'll see you then. Thanks.